Some exhibitors could not resist and included Viva Magenta finishes in their collections. The Panton Institutes, I like that they combine vintage-looking wood with some clay and slate, which in general there are poofs that are made after Kenzo poofs, which in turn were made Americans, but for some reason they have covered everything with shits, apparently afraid that… Hi friends, you may have thought that we were done with the 2023 winter-spring season with exhibitions. But no, not so. We have one show that got a little lost in time. It's called the International Furniture Fair, and it takes place in Cologne, Germany. It's the beginning of summer, and yet they call it the spring edition. Usually it was the very first furniture event of the year, and many of the leading companies would show their pre-premieres. Now, because of all the restrictions, this exhibition has been shifted in the schedule and is held after the Milan Salon. And of course, it is hard enough to present something new and surprise somehow. But nevertheless, some leading German companies have gathered here. We'll definitely visit their booths and see how this exhibition looks after the pandemic, because the last time it was held was in 2020, and I visited it only in 2017. I think there's been a lot of change in that time. Like what? Have a comfortable seat, I'll try to show you today, but from the looks of it, the exhibition is not very big. I can already share my first impressions. First of all, the exhibition itself is really very small, because it is not that not all the halls are occupied, not that not all the levels of the halls are occupied, not even the whole space of the level is occupied. For instance, there are only exhibitors using half of the space on the second level of Hall 11. Here are mostly European companies, German companies, a little bit of Dutch companies, a little bit of Belgian ones, and you can already see the general mood. Secondly, the exhibition is obviously focused on the German market, because everything here is quite laconic in terms of forms and finishes. But nevertheless, there are certain bright spots. Some exhibitors could not resist and included Viva Magenta finishes in their collections, the Panton Institute's Color of the Year. The shapes are, just like in Milan, quite organic. We see these pebbles everywhere, rounded armrests on all the booths. I'm walking through here again and I see the same thing. Boucle is also present, as is of course naturalness, which is not only in forms but also in materials, because wood, natural stone are also present here. It should be said that even here not everything is grey, beige, sad or boring. There are also very bright booths. Bright by the color of the stand itself and by the items that are presented. I would say that non-German colors are quite interesting, complex and deep, and I really liked the combination of different shades and different textures within these shades. One very reputable German company presented a very nice sofa. As for the shapes, it should be said that in addition to this naturalness, there is a certain graphic, that is, some polyhedrons, dodecahedrons or icosahedrons are the inspiration, and of course the edges are softened and rounded. I think it's still an influence of the aesthetics of the 80s, because back then retrofuturism was also very much in vogue. It's interesting because in Milan, for some reason, I didn't pay attention to this. Another, in my opinion, quite interesting observation is that a lot of island furniture has appeared, namely island sofas. This, of course, doesn't surprise anyone, but nevertheless, island compositions are presented here in several places, not only this famous beer on an ice floe. But for some reason, there was a black beer on a black ice floor this time. Also, storage systems, something that is usually arranged on the walls, can now stand in the middle, and maybe even movable, and this is a reflection of a very interesting trend that came out of the pandemic. It's a trend towards the flexibility of spaces, that is, the ability to transform and use them for different purposes, as a living room, a dining room, or a home office. As for home offices, here too, it is important to note the various versions of so-called daybeds, which are essentially designed for you to work at home in maximum comfort. As far as wood is concerned, it is important to note the traditionally strong participation in this exhibition of Eastern European manufacturers of solid wood furniture. There are mostly tables and chairs. The wood used here is mostly practically alive, untreated wood. This doesn't mean that you will not meet these exhibitors at other fairs. Most likely they are there, but somewhere in distant corners. You just won't pay attention to them. And here they look quite decent, and I must say that is absolutely equitable, because manufacturers from Poland, Bosnia and Herzegovina and Hungary look really interesting. Apparently, a strong business program makes up for the lack of exhibitors. Here, for example, Sebastian Herkner, the great and wonderful designer, is having some public conversation. If you've thought, as I did, that things are going quite well so far, I have to disappoint you. I went straight into the most decent pavilion, and now we will literally have a report on an incline. I moved to the next hall, and there are still a few Germans here. And it is quite interesting that the Germans are working with solid wood very well too. I like that they combine vintage-looking wood with some clay and slate, which in general is not new, with metallic effect porcelain stoneware and metal, and it looks really good. In certain interiors it can be very nice. You will say that any carpenter can make such a thing. I'll answer right away. He can't, because everything here is based on the quality of wood drying and vast experience. Of course, you can make it, but the fact is that it will not look the same in a couple of years. It will crack, dry out and skew. The probability is very high. Some people even like it. Some people will say it's an amazing natural aging process. Absolutely, but you just have to understand it. Another interesting, purely German story is the use of bench seating in dining rooms. So you put a bench instead of the 3 chairs on one side of the table, and you can seat 5 fit adults or 7 children. Either way, you can seat more people. It adds some flexibility, so it's quite an interesting solution to look at. We've already talked a lot about the trend for outdoor spaces, which has around long before the pandemic, but naturally intensified during it because everyone wanted their own little corners of nature. The peculiarity of outdoor furniture is that it may well be indoor. That is, it can be used inside as well. This flow from interior to exterior and back again always works very well. And the flow can be in the literal sense. In winter the chair is inside, and in summer you take it out on the terrace, which is very convenient and again responds to the trend of flexibility of space that has already been mentioned. Outdoor furniture is pretty good here. Not that there is a lot of it, but there are some interesting companies. A Portuguese one presents such luxury outdoors, and it can really be objects that are used in the interior. Very rare ones, in my opinion, funny objects like swings. The kitchen looks great, and the kitchen can also be used both on the terrace and inside if you like such rich aesthetics on the one hand and quite brutal aesthetics on the other. There's a German company here that represents the outdoors. I like them, and they explicitly state on their stand. You can use our pieces both outside and inside. There is also an island composition, which of course makes even more sense for terraces than for interiors. Secondly, this island composition has an integrated umbrella, which is great. Speaking of umbrellas, good umbrellas are also often a problem to find. On the other hand, this is also because good umbrellas cost a real ton of money. And when people find out, not everyone is willing to invest in one. Next, we come to one surprising feature of the Cologne exhibition. There are a lot of Chinese manufacturers here. China doesn't always mean that it is all very bad, because, for example, this company that represents our door is also trying to be design-oriented. They even made a collection together with Pininfarina's famous Italian design practice, and the other collections look pretty good too. But as for this particular feature, there are some, so to speak, alarming figures. Before the exhibition, I looked at the list of exhibitors to see how many, who and what companies participate. I remind you that the exhibition is taking place in Germany, and there are 86 exhibiting companies from this country, but 210 from China plus 70 from Hong Kong. I'm not talking about any other Asian countries. That is clearly not in favor of the industry of the titular country where the exhibition is held. Here we are already starting to see not so nice pieces. That is a little bit of mass market at first, but I'm sure that now we will see even worse. We do not generally associate the north of Europe and the Baltics with any powerful players in the furniture and interior design market. But nevertheless, there are a few companies here that you can pay attention to. The collective stand of the Latvian national team, for example, there is also furniture made of wood, and they work really well with wood. There are poofs that are made after Kenzo poofs, which in turn were made after Kenzo bags. Kenzo is no more, Kenzo Maison I mean, but Latvians have poofs. In principle, they are quite nice, and it is clear that it is not a full copy. It's such an inspiration, although it's very close to the original. Amazingly, it turns out Estonians make carpets. This exhibition shows what they can make out of them. The Dutch make a cool industrial-style tables. You can lift them up, you can turn a dining table into a bar table. There's something masculine, brutal, and quite interesting about it. I have to say that not all companies that belong to one country or another actually manufacture in their own country, because there are a lot of Dutch, Danish, or whatever companies that make everything there in Southeast Asia. As for Brazilians, I'm sure they make furniture in their country, and there's certainly not much to share and admire here, just a few pieces. Although those are far from the best representatives of Brazilian design, I can definitely say that. It's worth noting, though I wouldn't want to, that Brazilians sometimes behave like the Chinese. That is, they copy successful and quite famous recognizable items. It is probably still more correct to say that plagiarism has no nationality. It happens everywhere, unfortunately. Are you ready for the thrill? Please fast forward a few minutes for the faint of heart. This is just that pavilion, which represents the bulk of participants in this exhibition. And here everything is very, very hard for an aesthete. But for example, in order to understand how Asian companies imagine the taste of German public, you can definitely take a look. And there are not only Asians here, there are quite exotic countries. There is a furniture from Kosovo. I don't know though to whom they are trying to offer it here, but they are nominally present. There is Romanian furniture. In general, this whole hall can be called a dreary place. Here, among other things, you can even find houses for pets. Remember, there was such a test for the quality of the interior. If the cat house looks organic in your interior, then the interior is bad. So make good interiors so that there is no room for a cat house. Still, something good has to be said about this exhibit. They have amazing naming. You won't find such inspiring names in any Italian or any other European country, because everything there is mostly by founders' names. But here is something super inspiring. And by the way, the prefix, which sounds in Chinese like "hui," means profit or even wisdom. In general, something very good. It is necessarily hidden in the name. The naming is absolutely awesome, no need to be embarrassed. For the sake of objectivity, we should mention one more country of production, which is in the spotlight here, and that's Turkey. And here it is present, quite widely, not as much of course as colleagues from Southeast Asia. By design, nothing is better, and you can distinguish only by the names of the stands and more severe men. Although there are some stands that look quite European, but with the ornate furniture, polished wood and brass, shiny velvet, the origin immediately gives away. Probably there are some decent manufacturers in Turkey, but they are obviously not represented at this exhibition, and it's a pity. The third and the last section of the exhibition is dedicated to sleep systems. There are actually three sections. The first one is called Pure. It's that half of the hall of decent furniture. The rest is called Home. This hall is called Home Sleep. There are different mattresses. The composition of the exhibitors is about the same as in the part called Home. A lot of Chinese and a little bit of others. I didn't see any decent brands here. It probably makes sense to pay attention to the Swedes, because they understand sleep culture and sleep technology. You can pay attention to the Americans, but for some reason they have covered everything with shits, apparently afraid that their secrets will be stolen. There was a rather funny episode here. I was forbidden to take pictures at one of the booths by the Chinese. That is, the Chinese, who have been running around all their lives, taking pictures of everything, now forbid me to take pictures of their great finds. By the way, the technology is quite interesting, but it was not possible to find out more details because it's a secret. If you're interested in sleep culture, we have a couple of episodes about beds from the Milan Fair. Check it out. The most important thing that I realized today, and I hope that you got the idea, is that the Cologne exhibition, unfortunately, at the moment has apparently gone through the best of times and is not in the most brilliant shape. And if you think you wasted your time watching this issue, friends, you did not. It's better to spend those few minutes to realize you don't need to go here yet, than to spend the money, come and see for yourself. So write something nice. For example, Vladimir, thank you, you saved us from unnecessary spending, and that will be very cool. And of course, share this video with your friends, because there are definitely some interesting ideas here. And let your friends know that they don't have to go to the Cologne Furniture Fair yet. Sometime we'll come back here, and hopefully it will also return to its former glittering state, as it was in 2017, for example, because it was really quite an enjoyable exhibition. And better let it be in winter, let it really be a platform for announcements and previews of the biggest furniture show in the world, which takes place in Milan. I urge you to watch all of our episodes from Milan Design Week 2023. It's fair to say that it's probably the biggest in terms of attendance. But the biggest in terms of space is the show that's taking place at High Point in America. And we have a report from there too, so check it out. Here it looks like the disco is starting and the aperitivo is being served. So that's it for today. Bye!